What's up, guys? This is Brandon with Brothers of Merit. I want to thank you guys for tuning into episode 6 this week, where we interviewed Matt Greiner from the band August Burns Red. So I got Taylor in the house. He's back from Vietnam. Taylor, what's up?
What's up? Yeah, this is a great episode. I think that you guys are going to get a lot out of it. Matt dives into some real cool, deep stuff, and I know Brandon's a real big fan, so it was really cool to have him on, so it's real good. Brandon, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was kind of tough to contain that. So, first and foremost, thanks again for tuning into us, as we said. And second, we've been getting some really good feedback and positive feedback from other men about this podcast. So with us doing it, we can't, get to where we are without you guys sharing it and listening to it. So we really hope that what we're doing and with Brothers of Merit is helping you guys further your walk with God and, just better yourself as a man.
Yeah.
So.
100%. So the more that you guys can share, the more that you guys can rate and review the podcast, that really does help us out a lot. So kind of shameless plug there, but it helps us out a ton. So we appreciate anything that you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into the interview, let the guys hear it, and see what they
I think the
about
only
it.
thing that we want to say just about the interview real quick is just that the audio quality, this was recorded via Skype, via a couple thousand miles away, and Matt was doing some things, so apologize for the audio quality ahead of time, but the content's real good, so just bear with it, and we'll see you on the other side.
Matt, I think we interrupted him mid-workout to stop and do this interview, so Matt, you're listening to this, we again are super appreciative of it, so keep that in mind, and we'll let you guys listen to it. All righty. Hey Matt, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing well.
So you are actually down in Florida right now. If you can let the guys know, you're on a little, well, how big is your tour and where are you at currently and where will you be in the next few weeks?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Greiner. I play drums in a metal band called August Burns Red. We're currently on tour across the United States and up into Canada for a few shows. We left Wednesday night, so it is currently day 5 of the tour. We've already played 4 shows, 3 of which have been sellouts, so we're off to a good start. We're working our way across the southern part of the country here through Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and then we're going up the west coast through California and then looping back across the country. It's a total of just over 30 shows and about 40 days. This is kind of typical for us, doing this length of a tour. We have a really good crew. We're traveling in a tour bus. Everyone knows what is expected of them and is prepared. And so far, the shows have been really good.
That is awesome. It sounds like you're going to be pretty busy. So thanks again for coming on to our show. I know I speak for myself and Taylor and many other listeners that you've been tremendously influential to not just Christian men, but Christian drummers all over the world. So I know you've been to like 45 different countries and 6 continents and all. So that's that's pretty wild. So
I would rather stay home if if people say, Matt, it sounds like you need a vacation. Where do you want to go? And it's hard to say anything other than, well, actually a staycation sounds pretty good, where I just stay in my house and don't go anywhere because of all the traveling. With the band.
I'm sure.
I will say, however, that traveling for leisure is a lot different than traveling with the band. What might be hard to understand as someone who doesn't tour is just listening to this and doesn't know much about the music industry. It's a lot different to go somewhere. Say we're in Paris, France, and people say, oh my gosh, Paris is so pretty. Well, yeah, but it's a lot different when you're only there for a day and your schedule is that you have sound check, meet and greet. So how far away are you really getting away from the venue itself? So your experience with a particular place in large part is really what the inside of the venue looks like and maybe the few blocks around it. So if you ever are talking to a musician and you want to ask them where they've been to and how they liked it, take it with a grain of salt, because they might be talking a lot more so about the venue itself than the actual city.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, Matt. So to start off, take us back, like your bring up and your testimony. What kind of led you to wanting to play the drums, and then ultimately what led you to drumming in a band like August Burns Red and your guys' faith outlook and things like that?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in a Christian home. I have 7 siblings. I was homeschooled. I lived in a pretty small community, farming community in Lancaster County. I actually still call that home. It's a great place to live. And drumming is certainly nothing that's ever been done in my family prior to myself. So it wasn't something I looked to my dad or my mom for, my grandparents. I was at a creation festival. I heard the drummer, saw the drummer playing, kind of, struck a chord with me. And then every week at church, I'd watch the drummer. And it wasn't one of those, I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but you're drawn to something in a way that you know that you're not capable of achieving or performing, what it is that you're observing or drawn to, but you understand it. And for me, that was drums. I knew that I wasn't able to play drums the way they were being played on stages at church or at these, big Christian festivals, but I understood what they were doing somehow. It was innate to me. And so I eventually quit playing piano lessons. I quit taking piano lessons and picked up drumming as part of my homeschool curriculum. Fell in love with it. I wasn't sure what to do, but I just spent time with two sticks in my hand and sweating it out, and my parents had a lot of grace and putting up with the noise. And eventually I got into heavier music because of a Christian festival called Purple Door. And I met a couple guys from Marianas Central High School who liked the same kind of music. And so we said, let's try to play some of these songs that we've heard and we love. Let's see if we can kind of, work our way through it. You play drums, I play guitar, he plays bass, this guy can scream. Just try it. What's the worst that could happen?
I mean, that's awesome. So when you're doing that and you started to like pick up drumming, when did you guys actually decide to start like, hey, let's form a band and let's try to actually do this thing?
Yeah, so we played a show actually playing those 3 covers that we worked through. And the crowd reaction was pretty good to us playing these songs. We were terrible at our instruments, but we had a lot of fun, and it was something different from our ordinary life. I was doing landscaping at the time, still in high school. JB was working at a grocery store, and Grant I can't exactly remember what Grant was doing, but I mean, we were just normal guys working normal jobs, and we played the show and really enjoyed being on stage and playing together. So we then started to write our own songs. And we put together a show and played for about 400 people at a fire hall in Mastersonville, Pennsylvania, which was just crazy. We brought in a national act called This Day Forward, and they headlined, and we played main support, I believe. And what started to happen in Lancaster County was this trend of us booking out, VFW halls or fire halls or skating rinks, anywhere that there was a room with power and parking. And we would have these shows. And we did this on the weekends. Eventually got signed to CI Records, put out Looks Fragile After All, which was a 5-song EP. And then eventually signed to Solid State and put out Thrill Seeker in 2005.
Was it like 8th or 9th record now that you guys have put out?
It is our Phantom Anthem was our 8th, I believe.
Yep. That's awesome.
It's hard to keep track at this point.
I have to ask this question. Like, how can you remember? Like, your drumming is so unique. Some, bands you listen to, the beats and everything sounds alike, but your drumming style is completely different. Like, every song, you have a new type of beat and rhythm, and your fills are different. Like, how do you remember how to place those fills and stuff into every single individual song differently? Like, that's insane to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. I actually was just talking to a friend last night about this who used to play drums on tour with us. His name's Nick Torza. He lives in Charleston, South Carolina now. And I said, it's funny. I have a neighbor of mine who's a handyman. He's good at everything. I mean, if there's a wiring problem in your house, he can wire it. If there's a plumbing issue, he can correct it. If your car breaks down, he can diagnose it. He knows how to take on any sort of mechanical electrical problem. Okay, so I was talking to him and I said, it's kind of interesting. If you talk to me about the last 15 years of my life and what I've accomplished, most of it would be centered around drumming. And if I talk to you about what you've accomplished and learned, most of it would be centered around not one thing, but at least 10. And I was telling my friend Nick last night, when you put all your energy and focus into one thing, you're going to get good at it. You're going to become proficient in it. If you want to be good at a lot of different things, you're not going to be great at any of them unless it's just a very odd or extreme, scenario, set of circumstances. So for me to be good at drums, for me to be able to remember all these parts has been a tremendous commitment of time and energy. What people don't realize is that in that 15-year lapse, there's been omission in a lot of other areas of my life so that I can commit to this one. And so I think if you look at any professional athlete or musician, it's probably the same scenario. There's a certain personality that's more inclined to focus and dedicate themselves to one thing above everything else and not lose sight of it instead of jumping around from one thing to the next. And so yeah, there's all these drum parts, there's all these drum fills, and what happens is I have something everybody else has, which is just called muscle memory. So when you wake up in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you're opening doors, you're making breakfast. All of these things are just very natural, to anyone just because you've been doing it every day. And so same thing is true with the drum parts I play. When I play a song, let's take for example the song Provision. I'm going to play that song exactly the same way every single time. The 16th notes, the kick drum patterns, which cymbal I hit, how I hit it, how many strokes on tom 1, 2, 3, snare drum, ghost notes. Every single nuance is built into that song. And while I'm playing it, I don't, but I could probably veer off into this daydream and be thinking about what I'm going to eat for breakfast the next day. Sometimes when you do that, you pay for it. And the band turns around and goes, "Oh my gosh, what got into you?" But it's the beauty and the miracle of muscle memory.
That's awesome, and I love that I can like appreciate all that. Although unlike Brandon, I have no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about ghost notes and fills and
I'm
things.
loving listening to this right now. Like, it's so awesome.
But I definitely can appreciate the skill and the mastery that comes behind that. So that's awesome.
Thank
I have
you.
one more like drum and band related question. What was like the moment that you guys knew like Augsburg's Red is going to be a thing? Like I'm going to be able to give advice about going to Paris and I'm going to be able to like be on a tour going around the country instead of just being guys in Mannheim that are selling out fire halls.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing that comes to my mind is, and I'd say everyone in the band's answer is going to be different. Of course, there's
Sure.
the day that I sat down with my parents and I said, "Mom and Dad, we just got signed to Solid State Records. I've been working for Metzler Landscaping for the past 10, at that point, probably 7 years. I really enjoy this band. I realize that it might be hard for you guys to imagine that this could be a lucrative income or could be a career path that is worth quitting college for. I understand that. I can empathize with that. But I love drumming, and I think that you guys can see that based on the fact that I'm practicing with every spare minute I have. Is it okay if I quit college and do this?" And I just tried to honor them with, my questioning. And, at the time, maybe it wasn't so much me honoring them as just trying to get their okay. But as I
Sure.
look back, I've definitely grown a lot in my appreciation of my parents and how much it took for them to say yes, even though
Sure.
they didn't understand that. I mean, they could have no way of understanding really what was in store, in the same way that I couldn't have, had any understanding back in 2005, and so here we are 14 years later, 2 Grammy nominations later, traveling the world many times over,
Jeez.
making a good income, traveling on a bus with 7 employees traveling with us, many others in offices, in New York and California. It's just, you can't make something like that up. So of course you're not thinking
Sure.
about that, but
Yeah.
you're just taking it one day at a time. And I think for me personally, okay, when did I realize that this was going to be something? I think every day is just a new appreciation of the fact that I get to have this experience. I remember Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seahawks, talking about, day one or game one, 1-for-1.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if they win the last game, they're going to just forget about the fact that they won it. And they're going to go into this game as if it's the first game. If it's the first day of the season or the last day of the season, it's still number one. They're basically resetting the clock. And that resonates with me because, of course, I've been doing this a long time, but you learn to appreciate it in a new way. It seems like every day or every time you think about what you're doing. So I certainly don't take this for granted. I realize that it's hard to make $200 when I go home and work landscaping. It's not easy to, make money, but in this
Right.
band, we've been fortunate financially and a lot more importantly in other ways as well.
So it's funny you get into that, Matt. So that kind of leads me. You made the comment that you're traveling with 7 other people on the bus with you guys, and also that kind of segues me into the question about Brotherhood. So you have been in this band with these men, the 5 of you guys, since 2005, if not before, when you guys started off in the VFWs and fire halls and all. So what advice could you give guys that are listening to this and us about Brotherhood? I mean, you guys go through the worst and the best of each other. Like the things you see, you're crammed in a bus sometimes. So I'm sure there's been fights and there's been, altercations, things like that. But what advice can you say as a man who does this for a living and tries to do it while walking with God? What can you give to us and all of our listeners on how we could go about seeking brotherhood?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll do my best to answer it. The first thing I'll say is, if you are sitting here listening to this and you say, I think I have a good grasp on being a good person, on being a good mentor, on being a good friend. I think I do a pretty good job of being fair to other people and not judgmental. If you're anything like me and you're saying that 8 years ago, you're actually probably more wrong than you think you are. I thought that I had the answers because I knew Jesus. I thought that because of my morals, my upbringing, because I stayed away from certain things and instead I did other things that I felt were right, that I was the person to be, I was maybe leading the way. I was on the right path. Those were probably some of my sentiments. But what happened was when I started the band in 2003 with JB and Brent, I wanted the band to be a ministry. I wanted the band to be, evangelical, preach the gospel, help people, lead people, love people. And what happened was I realized over time that I needed my heart to be changed a lot more than God needed other people's hearts to be changed as a result of what I was doing. So in other words, I started the band. I wanted it to be something. What I realized down the road is that I needed the band a lot more than the band needed me. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I have the worst coworkers. They do this, they say this. I can't get along with these friends. I can't believe that these people are doing this. I can't believe my sister-in-law this, my brother-in-law this. Just hold on a second and take a step back. When you think about what Jesus did with his time, which was limited, you're surprised to find out the type of people that he was with. And it's not that he was forced to be with these friends, as he called them. He chose to be. And they were not the kind of people who were living, godly lives. So who are your brothers? Who are your sisters? Who are you held accountable to? I would say in my band, Jake is a brother. Why is he a brother? Well, because he's a Christian. He loves Jesus. He's committed to his faith. The other guys, Brent, JB, Dustin, we might not share the same faith, but they are the same type of brothers that I need. And I hope that they look to me in the same way, in the sense that, yeah, we don't share the same faith, but we're all on the same playing field. So let me give you a little story here to hopefully draw us together. In 2012, we were in Sydney, Australia, and I had been following a company called Invisible Children for a while. I don't know if you've heard about them or not, but they had this campaign called Coney, and I put Coney on a sign. We were supposed to take pictures. Well, Jake took the sign during the show and held it up. We got booed. And it was the first time we've ever been booed as a band. Backstage, after the show, it was tense.
I can only imagine, yeah.
You could feel the tension, because here Jake, innocently held this sign up to try to show support for what he thought was a good thing, and I thought was a good thing, but there was controversy surrounding this particular nonprofit. And everyone knew it, apparently, but us. And so backstage, here we are, and we dive into this argument as a band about, wait, what are we trying to accomplish here? Are we trying to play music? Or are we trying to spread a certain message? What are we standing for? What is our goal? And of course, it didn't just start that night. There was sort of an elephant in the room. I was the one, as I started off on this segment about, I wanted the band to be a a mission field. I wanted it to be evangelical. I wanted to preach the gospel. I wanted the band to be this thing. I wanted that. But that's not fair to everybody else in the band who is entitled to believe and think, pursue whatever they want to,
Yeah.
and for 7 years at that point, I had been putting myself above them. I had an issue with pride. Whenever you look at someone else, you say, oh my gosh, how could they do that? That thing. What are you doing? You're elevating your moral standard above theirs. Well, do you have any right to do that? Absolutely not. Now, is that something that happens in Christianity? Yes, all the time. Why? Because we feel like because we are doing something good, according to what the Bible says, or Jesus says, that we're more entitled. But what the Bible actually says is your best is about as good as filthy rags, which is nothing. There's nothing you can do. And so I had forgotten that, I think, and I do that all the time, actually. And in that moment, in that backstage room, we faced the fact that we are not out here to be a Christian band. We are not out here. That is not our primary goal. And I don't even think it was my primary goal. I think I just wanted it to be that, but I wasn't actually living that. I was focused on drumming a lot more than I was focused on other people, I think. And so once we were honest about our goal as a band, essentially we took off the Christian title completely. We are not a Christian band. We are here to play music well, to help people, love people, and spread a positive message. What happened was the next day, Jake and I were mortified, and we had a hotel room together, and we thought about quitting the band and flying home, which I don't even know if the other guys know this. It's just, it happened, and it was tense, and, we're just like, we can't believe this, And as the days went on, you'll never believe what happened. We started to get closer. Why? We started to become better brothers, better friends, better band members. Why? Because we shared a common vision. If you're surrounded by people who you just can't get along with because they're not Christians or because they're doing something that you think is sinful or bad or evil, don't look at the negatives. Try to find some common goals, some things that you have in common, because I would be willing to bet there are quite a few. You might come to be surprised by how many things you have in common with the people around you that you have in the workplace or friends or in church. And so Jake and I realized that, yeah, it's actually a much better idea for us to call our band what it is, because when we die and go to heaven or whatever happens after, we're done here, however that looks, I would feel much more comfortable facing God and him saying, why didn't you call yourselves a Christian band? You really, you prayed with these guys, or you helped these guys, or a lot of people found me, through your lyrics or through your message or through meeting you. Then, on the contrary, facing God and him saying, how dare you? How dare you use me and my name to accomplish something for your personal gain? And of course, everyone would say that. I mean, everyone would say they'd rather err on the side of safety or caution. But I would challenge you to think about the things in your own life that you're banking on your moral character, on your moral aptitude. You're saying, I am a good person because I do this. I am a Christian because I do this. I can't associate with those people because of this. And I would just recommend that you say, hold on, is it you that is good? If it is, I have yet to meet you, because I haven't met anyone who is completely good. I mean, even the good people aren't quite good enough. And if that's true, if you have to admit that you're not there, you haven't made it, then what happens is you start to look around at the people around you and say, well, I actually have a lot to learn from, this guy, because, yeah, he's not a Christian. He doesn't believe in Jesus, but at least he's consistent in the way he's living his life. And I can have a relationship with him. I can laugh with him. I can hang out with him. I can get along with him. I share in the same hobbies with him. And so you start to build this brotherhood with people of different faiths or of the same faith. And you start to become the type of Christian that anyone would want to be friends with and sit next to on a plane. So that 2012 moment, in Sydney, have you had that, as a listener, have you had that moment where you've had that confrontation and that hammering process, that grinding? Because if there's the elephant in the room in your relationships, if you're looking for brotherhood, if you're looking for a friend, you might be closer than you think. Just have that sit down, have that, conversation and say, what are our goals here? Or here's what I'm struggling with, or here's what I want. And that's really step number one, I think, in finding that with somebody else.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the things that we have talked about a lot here with Brothers of Merit is that moment when brotherhood is kind of galvanized through adversity. And like we've talked about, you see that in movies with sports teams, or when people go through like war movies, like when people go through like hard times like that, then there's blood, sweat, and tears together. That's when brotherhood is formed. But that also just happens with just normal life stuff. And I think that's a great word, that it doesn't necessarily just have to be Christian men going through it together. But like you said, you can be a lot closer, and it doesn't just have to be that faith aspect, but you can be a lot closer to it than you think. And I love that. That's one of the things that we're super passionate about here is if you think that you're real close to that, or if you're like if you really want that, just sometimes all it takes is like you said, is having that conversation of what are we really doing here? Like what are we, what's our goal here? And then once that goes, that opens up a floodgate that men are really kind of like deep down in our souls. That's what we want together. And so it just kind of letting it ride from there.
Yeah, and then making yourself available. I'm pretty bad at that. There's a local nonprofit called Men of Iron. So say you're a mentor and you know of someone in your life who is searching or they're hurting, you'll kind of take them under your wing, and they have a curriculum in place to help guide you. Well, this could, happen without a curriculum, of course. This could just be you and someone that you're helping. But that requires you to be available at 2 a.m. if the person's struggling, right? True love requires sacrifice. And if you're going to be a brother to someone, if you're going to be a friend to someone, it means that, of course you'll fail them because no one's perfect, but you're going to be there for them no matter what, no matter when. And that's a big thing, with Jake. Jake came into this band, the singer from my band. Jake came into the band from a completely different upbringing than mine. And so he actually learned a lot from me about Christianity, but I learned a lot from him about a world without God's love. And both are very important. It really does work both ways. I learned how to be non-judgmental, or at least a lot less so than I used to be, from him. I remember one time I was walking with Jake, and we were walking by a group of people, and a kid came up to me. He's probably in his teens, and he said, "Hey," he's like, "can you buy me some cigarettes?" I turned to him. This is probably 12 years ago. I said, "Cigarettes? I'm not buying you cigarettes. I'm a Christian." And Jake pretty much took my head off with his fist.
Oh, man.
And he's like, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "The kid was underage, and that's not the right thing to do." And he said, "And you think the way you handled that was?" And I'm like, "No, I am trash compared to him, actually, now that I think about it." So, he loves to bring that up because it was like a bad day for me, and he was able to just school me completely on, his moral aptitude went through the roof that day, and mine sunk into hell's flames.
Yeah. So, Matt, in your sermon that you did at LBC, The Tremendous Hurt and Relentless Love. So if anyone didn't check that out, you can go to LBC's stream live and watch. He plays a couple songs and he does a little sermon. But you mentioned in there that, everyone is fighting a battle that you don't know about. And what you just said about your lead singer, Jake, is the fact that you guys were brought up completely different, but he was also going through things that you didn't know about and vice versa. So to hit on that as we close here, why did that make it so important for you seeking brotherhood with Jake? Because of the fact that of what you said in your sermon, everyone doesn't know what you're going through and the battles that you're fighting within.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It would be almost impossible for someone who's hurting to look around. Well, I'll say it this way. Jake has experienced a lot of hurt in his life, okay? And that's part of his testimony. It's part of his story. And will he have all the answers as to why he was subject to all of the pain and suffering? Will he have all the answers? I don't think so before he dies. Do we need to have all the answers? As humans, we feel like we need to have an answer. If not today, tomorrow, and next year. But the amazing thing is, I think the answer to our pain and suffering is oftentimes the type of character that it brings out in us and creates in us. And this type of change in our heart, the hammering process that happens as a result of going through just painful things in life, challenges, mountains, yields results that really bring heaven to earth. And so oftentimes we want to say, where's the answer? What is the purpose? And we skip right over the fact that, okay, if we can say with due diligence that our goal on this planet is not to get a whole lot out of this planet, but to be made into a new creation for heaven, which is to follow, so that we can spend eternity with God. That is our goal. That is in our design. Then what is a more relevant and meaningful answer than the fact that we're being made into that new creation as a result of that pain and suffering? And so if you're going through difficulty, if you're going through pain, hang on, because you're going to be amazed at what happens to you if you just stick with it, and you're going to have a hard time. It's not going to be easy. Unfortunately, everyone is subject to pitfalls, to the pain that is all over the place. The amazing miracle of it all is that we have someone as Christians who knows what it's like to feel loss and feel pain and feel distant from his Father, from God. And fortunately, because of him, we never have to walk alone. And so you might lose your friend, you might lose your parents, and of course you will. It's life, but you won't lose him. And it's a lot harder to find comfort in that for me in the moment. Okay, I'd much rather have my friend here, right, than Jesus, because my friend and I can talk and I can hear his voice. We can go out together and eat. But when you lose that friend and you have nothing else, you start to hear his voice a little bit louder and you start to see him a little bit more clearly. And I think it's a pretty good trade-off in the end. And so if you're going through pain, if you're going through challenges, if you're going through suffering, find a brother. You don't need many of them. You just need one or two or three.
Good word.
You certainly need Jesus. But
Absolutely.
if you can find a couple, men in your life, pastor, it's amazing how helpful it could be. I went through some difficult stuff recently, and I had a really good Christian counselor, but you'll never believe how old he was. He was in his 70s. And you could say, oh my gosh, he has no idea, It's 2019. Well, you'd be amazed how much of an idea he has. Now, there were a couple things where it's like, you realize this is kind of the way things work now. But, wisdom is something that we can find a lot of different places. A good Christian counselor, find a brother, and sit down and read your Bible and pray. If you haven't done that in a while, now is a better chance than ever to start.
That's a good word.
Absolutely, Matt. So to get kind of away from the deep stuff, I'm going to do something just real quick the last couple of minutes for fun and the listeners as well. But I want to name off my top 3 favorite songs by your band. And if you, just for each one, a quick fact about that song that maybe somebody may not know. So my top 3. Number 3 is Majoring in the Minors on your Found in Faraway Places album.
That's good. Majoring in the Minors, I wrote the lyrics to Major in the Minors about a speech impediment I had until I was 19. I could not get words out, and here I was touring with Terry and Bury Your Dad, and I was terrified. And, it just talked about how you might think there's one big thing in your life that you have to beat and overcome, but hold on a second, because you will overcome it, likely, and there will be something else. So Majoring in the Minors is about don't stress the small stuff. It might seem huge right now, but there's always something.
Number 2 off your Constellations album, Whitewashed.
Yep, Whitewashed. All right. Whitewash, let's go musically here. JB wrote the song, as he does most of our songs. He wrote the do-do-do-do-do, like the beginning guitar riff. And
I love that riff, by the way.
And there was going to be nothing after that. It was just going to be that right into the breakdown. And I was just playing around one day up in the barn, and I wrote that drum fill in the beginning, showed JB, and he said, cool, let's keep it. And it was one of those, little moments that has turned into possibly our biggest song.
There's something that sticks out to me, that music video. I can't remember off the top of my head. They had a green guitar, I think, in the music video.
Oh, JB, yeah.
Yeah, that was JB. Yeah, I that was so funny because that sticks in my head when I think of that music video.
Yeah.
And then, so number 1, my favorite song by you guys is Ghosts, which is off your Found in Faraway Places album.
Yep.
So also, fun fact, Jeremy McKinnon from A Day to Remember is in that song.
Correct.
You guys and A Day to Remember were one of my favorite bands coming up as
Cool.
well. So when Jeremy McKinnon was in that song, it was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. So what can you tell me about that song?
Yeah, Ghost is about really our vet, or our homeless, and those that we sort of walk past and we don't really, give our attention to, but that those people in our lives that really we should just stop and think about who they are, what they mean to us, what they mean to our country. The music video was a lot of fun to shoot. It was a big cast. We had a lot of extras in it, and it was a big production. And it was the first time, I think, the only time that we had a storyline that involved other people that really told a pretty powerful narrative. There was a little bit of performance in there, but there was a lot of extras helping to tell the story.
Yeah, that is a very powerful music video. And I tell you, I love that song. And I challenge any listeners out there that are listening to this that aren't quite into the, heavy side of music. I challenge all of you to put that aside and listen to this band for their instrumental talents, because it's not all about the heaviness. It's about what each person contributes and how musically talented they are. So, and last real quick, I got to throw this out there. It was actually number 4 on my list, but since I have you on here, I got to ask. Marianas Trench off your Constellations album.
Yeah, Jake wrote that song lyrically. It's a great song. It's about the feeling of drowning and where you're going to go for help. You feel like you have nothing left, and the way that song opens up is really quiet. It's soft. It's in 5/8 time signature, so it's a little odd, but the way it's played feels normal. It feels powerful. Jake always gets on his knees at the beginning of that song, and you'd have to ask him, but I think he usually does some praying during the beginning of it live. And I would imagine the song still has a lot of the same meaning that it did when he wrote the lyrics to it.
That's so cool. The beginning of that song, it's like a melodic type intro to it, and it's just a smooth, soft, like it is an amazing song. So that is so cool that I know the background now that Jake actually prays on stage before that. That's why I like doing something like this, so the listeners can hear about that, and people may not know this as well across the world. So once again, we can't thank you enough for your time, especially while you're on tour. You're, giving back to not just fans, but to Christian men around the world that are trying to better our walk with Christ. So this is huge from Taylor and I that you did this. So anyone listening, if you guys want to check August Burns Red out, their website, www.augustburnsred.com. And Taylor, you want to say anything to Matt before we go?
Yeah, no, just same. Thank you very much. Very gracious with your time, so we appreciate you. And this was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. If you're listening to this, thanks for listening. I obviously don't know what you're going through or where you're at or what your needs are, but I will say, it is important to find for yourself. You got to figure out who you are. You have to figure out who the people in your life are. And most importantly, figure out who Jesus is and test him. He's capable of being tested. He'll stand the test.
Absolutely. We appreciate it, and we will hopefully talk again soon.
That'd be great. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, Matt, no problem.
So there you have it, guys. Matt Greiner's take on life and brotherhood and his walk with God. So we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Taylor, I know I'm sure you were kicking back and listening to your ghost notes and things like that. You're probably loving life. So
exactly. I learned a lot about drumming in that episode, so it was good stuff.
Yeah, so we wrap it up. Check us out at www.brothersofmerit.com, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Yep.